Late last night, the transfer don Fabrizio Romano blessed us with a here we go for the third Tottenham transfer of the summer. However, I, for one, am going to wait until we see the player holding up that lily white shirt before I count my chickens. I've been burnt before. Although all looks good for the signing of a midfielder that Thomas Frank has specifically told the board he wants this summer, and it could well spell the end of Yves Bissouma's time at the club. Meanwhile, we're in again for a pacey French forward we just missed out on back in January, and I'll bring you the fallout and quotes from after our 1-0 win in the North London derby yesterday, and how joyous was that. All that and more on today's daily Tottenham transfer news. Guys, thank you so much for watching and listening wherever you are. Please do give this video a like on YouTube. Do subscribe to the channel and you can become a member. Only £1 a month, and it really helps me make this daily content for you. All the details of how are in the description box below. So last night became very, very busy in the world of Tottenham Hotspur transfers. At 11 o'clock last night, reports came out that Tottenham do indeed want to sign Randall Kolo Muani, the player that we nearly got back in January. It's believed that talks are underway between Spurs and the French club. However, that was after conflicting reports throughout the day. Early yesterday morning, people were saying Kolo Muani is a real target for Spurs. However, kind of middle of the day, it was said that he'd agreed a deal in principle to join Juventus on a 5-year contract, which is where he ended up on loan for the second part of this season. I do think, from everything I've heard, there is interest there. However, it will be a scrap for Tottenham. And he did pretty well, certainly started very well in his loan deal. But again, another player who, if we bring in, would have to acclimatise to the Premier League, having never played in this country before. But he is definitely an exciting talent, and one that Spurs fans everywhere are getting very, very pumped up about the thought of him playing for Tottenham Hotspur. Let's see what happens. It's just good, let's be honest, to hear that Tottenham are doing business again. Also, Spurs, alongside Aston Villa, supposedly leading the race to sign Matthias Soulé from AS Roma. It's been reported that Spurs are ready to offer up to 32 million euros to land the Argentine star. Soulé is also a very exciting talent. Left-sided player who likes to play off the right. Remind you of anyone? Eric Lamela, coming from Roma. He's a little bit more pacey than Lamela, but has all the technical skills, also Argentine. And he's definitely another one to keep an eye on in terms of him being on Tottenham's list. They're trying to get some more attacking skill, some more attacking drive, some more attacking prowess into Spurs' team. And I expect that to mean potentially, after this tour, Sonny and probably Richarlison leaving the club. But the here we go was not for either of those. It was last night at 11:15 from Fabrizio Romano. And that's right, it's João Palhinha from Bayern Munich. Here we go. Final green light arrived from Bayern. And the detail is this. The loan deal includes a 30 million euro, that's about 26 million pounds, buy option clause for Tottenham Hotspur at the end of the season. It is not mandatory. So Spurs have the choice, similar to how we did with Timo Werner. We have the choice as to whether to buy Palhinha for 30 million euros at the end of that loan deal. His full salary will be covered by Spurs, and Palhinha will travel for a medical in the next day or so. I would expect it to be today, probably, as long as Spurs have the medical department still at the training ground when they're out on tour. That came after a very quick couple of hours. 11 p.m., Fabrizio Romano had said it was nearly done. And then maybe half an hour before, he said it was in the final stages. Plettigol got involved and said he's set to have a medical in the coming days as well. I think Palhinha is a good signing. I do have some doubts as to whether Palhinha is a huge upgrade on Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who I think personally was given a little bit of a given short shrift by a lot of the Spurs fan base, because he certainly didn't suit Ange Postecoglou's style. But under Thomas Frank, we're going to need a little bit more bite in midfield. And Palhinha absolutely and definitely does bring us that. He is a player like no other I've seen in the modern day, who is like the opposite of Ledley King. You might be asking, why am I bringing Ledley King up? Because Ledley King was the king, if you excuse the pun, of staying on his feet. He would never slide into a tackle unless he absolutely needed to. Whereas Palhinha, who is 6'3" tall, loves to slide into tackles because, as he's said previously, he thinks it gives him kind of a wider berth and makes it harder for people to get round him. For me, the reason I think he slides into tackles so much is because he's not the quickest. Now, obviously, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg wasn't the quickest either. And that was another reason that I think Spurs fans didn't love him, his kind of inability to chase back and get into quick positions. But what Palhinha definitely does have is a really good reading of the game. And he just loves getting stuck in. He takes yellow cards like kids take sweets. And this is the first signing we've had probably since Eric Lamela where I'm tempted to start gambling again, because I used to win so much money on Eric Lamela getting booked in pretty much every game that he played in, and it will be the same for Palhinha. When he was at Fulham, before he went to Bayern Munich, he was a walking yellow card, picked up so many suspensions. But he also did a good enough job at Fulham in the Premier League to be picked up by Bayern Munich, where he hasn't really played that many games, and his Premier League experience will be one of the reasons that Tottenham are bringing him in. And a lot of Spurs fans, most of the Spurs community, have been talking about how we need a defensive midfielder, and he certainly is that. But like I said, let me know what you think in the comments. But for me, there are just doubts as to whether he's a much of an upgrade on Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who this summer did finally join Marseille on a permanent deal from Spurs, having been there on loan with an obligation. Let's see what happens. But the important thing, I think, for me is if Thomas Frank wants him and he thinks he can get the best out of him, and obviously he previously wanted Christian Norgard, who did such a great job for him at Brentford, another player, not the quickest, but just picks up good positions, knows how to break up play. Frank knows how important that is. And I think potentially a Palhinha and Bentancur double pivot just in front of the back four could be very difficult for teams to break down. And another good thing about Palhinha, very, very physical, big guy. Like I said, 6'3", decent in the air, and will help us from set pieces as well. Obviously, I'm sure even if you weren't watching my watch along yesterday, you will have all watched or seen the highlights of the Spurs 1, Arsenal 0 North London derby, a friendly. I'll tell you what, I thoroughly enjoyed winding up Arsenal fans on social media, since all of them now saying, oh, it's only a friendly, it doesn't matter. Trust me, that was one of the most highly competitive friendlies I've seen in a long time. There were some big challenges in there. A couple of Spurs players got booked. Kai Havertz should have been sent off. I don't know if you saw that, but after Christian Romero nutmegged him in his own box, Havertz lost control so much that his studs were knee high on Jed Spence, and in the Premier League with VAR, he would have been sent off for absolute sure. So for any Arsenal friends or colleagues of yours saying that Richarlison fouled Lewis Skelly, I think it was, before the Pat Matasar goal, just go back to them with that and say Kai Havertz would have been sent off and got a 3-game ban for violent conduct for what he did. It was a really enjoyable game. I saw a lot of very good stuff from Spurs, really putting their bodies on the line, but also some great stuff in possession, whilst remaining more balanced, a good shape about the side, and a lot of really great green shoots to see from what Thomas Frank has got into him in their first month together. Thomas Frank spoke after the game. He said, I felt like it was a competitive match. I think you saw it was competitive, and if you played in it, it was competitive. Some of the bits we've been working on hard is the combination of defensive organization, so high pressure, middle, low. There are clear principles, and that desire to keep a clean sheet, because that gives you a bigger opportunity to win matches. I think for the team we are building together, just reinforcing the messages we try to get into the players, and the team feel that. The desire to defend was good. First half in general, we played very well overall. Second half, I felt we defended a bit too much, but it was good. And the set pieces, I think, were good as well. We defended very well, but we're also dangerous. Of course, we were dangerous. Hit the post 3 times in the first half an hour, and our attacking set pieces looked so much more dangerous than I've seen them for a long time, really causing Arsenal a lot of trouble. And bear in mind how Arsenal are basically set piece FC. We also dealt really well with each of their attacking corners and free kicks. So there, set pieces alone, some really big improvements. Frank was asked after the game about the captaincy. He said, yeah, that is still to be confirmed. I haven't taken the decision yet. I'd like to understand the group of players a little bit more. I know I need to make a decision before the first official game against Paris Saint-Germain in the Super Cup, so I will do that. It's natural that both Romero and Son are captains, so we kept it the same. Thomas Frank was also asked about my player of the match yesterday, Mohamed Kudus, who I just think we have an unbelievable talent on our hands. And the key to it, and I think Thomas Frank is the right man for this, the key to it will be to keep him motivated, to keep him fully flushed with desire to play in the at the standards and at the level that he did yesterday. And that really he's shown throughout his pre-season so far. That was clearly something that West Ham couldn't do, but Frank is a very much a carrot manager, likes to put his arm around the shoulder of a player. And to me, it was really easy to see with Mohamed Kudus the upgrade that we have on Brennan Johnson. Now, I love Johnson again. Ole. He's a brilliant finisher, and I think Frank will find ways to get Johnson game time and to get him scoring goals for Spurs. But when Kudus is available, I don't think it will be on the right wing, because Kudus not only has everything Johnson has in terms of, you know, pace and ability to get in behind, but also he takes players on 1-against-1. But what I love most about Mohamed Kudus' performance yesterday, and what we're going to see more of, is that when, say, the centre-backs have got the ball or the midfielders got the ball under a bit of pressure, he will come from his wide right position into central midfield and take the ball sometimes under the pressure of 3 Arsenal players yesterday, and just held it up incredibly well. I would say his hold-up play is as good as Dominic Solanke's, and when they're playing together, we will have unbelievable options in the final third to keep the ball and keep the pressure on the opposition. He was outstanding at that yesterday. And Thomas Frank said this about him. I think he was really good today. His hold-up play, the way he takes hold of the ball in tricky situations, his 1-versus-1 skills, his creating opportunities for the team was top class. On top of that, I think he's working extremely hard. And there was a recovery run from a set piece when he was straining all the way back and won the ball back. I completely agree with that. You think about Kudus, you think he must be a paradise player. He's not going to want to work backwards either. But he's been showing that desire in this pre-season so far as well. And listen, if we can get 2 or 3 seasons of Thomas Kudus at his best, not only will Spurs be challenging for the top 4, I think, that's how good he is, but also I think Thomas Kudus could then start really interesting the biggest clubs in the world, the likes of Real Madrid, the likes of Barcelona. And I'm not trying to sell what a great player we have already, but what I'm saying is if we can keep him at his level in the Premier League, then people will sniff around him because he is that good, I'm telling you. Frank went on to say that's how he can help the team so much, meaning defensively. He will make a lot of the fans excited with his offensive actions, and he will also help the team defensively. Completely agree with everything Thomas Frank said. I can't really praise Mohamed Kudus enough at the moment. And for £55 million, an absolute steal. We're seeing exactly what all the Ghanaian fans who have been in my comments have been saying about Mohamed Kudus. Frank was asked about Pat Matsar. He said he's impressed me. I must admit he's been really good in the last 4 weeks. Pat Matsar had a great game. I'm not even going to just talk about his goal, which of course was beautifully finished, wonderful technique, but he was winning the ball off Arsenal players in our half 4, 5, 6 times, really importantly. And I've spoken for years about how I see Pat Matsar as having all the talent to potentially become a kind of modern day Patrick Vieira. He's got the legs, he's got the engine, he's got the ability to get up and down. But what he needed to add was his kind of reading of the game, his ability to win the ball back, but also technically yesterday. Technically, he was a lot stronger, and it's like he had more confidence in him. And I wonder if that's Thomas Frank kind of putting his arm around him and doing individual work with him and saying, I think you have this talent, and I think you can become this kind of player. And it's like Pat Matsar is growing in front of our eyes. And listen, it's not a shoo-in that Palhinha will come straight into the team. That's how good Sarr was yesterday. But even if it was maybe Palhinha in the team, it could be Sarr ahead of Bentancur or Sarr ahead of Bergvall. We've got good options now. And that's why I do think it spells probably trouble for Yves Bissouma. Palhinha and Sarr are just much more serious players on the pitch than Yves Bissouma, in my opinion. And that doesn't mean I don't think Yves Bissouma takes it seriously. But what I mean is he doesn't seem to have it in him to keep his concentration up for 90 minutes. He will always do something hard really well and then something easy really badly. Ali Gold did a piece where in it he asked Thomas Frank about Dominic Solanke's injury, and he said, Frank said he's close. If not for Sunday, then he should be fit to play against Bayern Munich. So that's kind of the fallout from the Arsenal game. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought of that performance in the comments. I'm just going to go on to an article that came out yesterday from John Percy in the Telegraph that I thought worth mentioning. But before I do, guys, thank you so much for watching. Do give this video a like on YouTube. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, do press that subscribe button and the bell for notifications for daily Tottenham Hotspur transfer news across this window. And also you can listen on the podcast platforms. Just go to Apple Podcast or Spotify, type in the Spurred On podcast and give me a subscribe and follow and a rating there. Okay, this article yesterday by John Percy in the Telegraph was really interesting because it talked about where Tottenham are being held back, and it is their inability to sell players. And I completely agreed with it. And I'm just going to read some of it because it's really, really fascinating. It says, the headline is "Why Tottenham's Inability to Sell is Holding Back Thomas Frank's Revolution. Failure to cash in on players when their stock is high has left Spurs trailing in the wake of rivals in the transfer market." And it's completely true. I think Daniel Levy, after maybe the likes of, Berbatov, Carrick, Modric, Bale, just has put so much emphasis on Spurs not being seen as a selling club that actually, whilst other clubs have managed to sell players at huge profits and money to reinvest in the last 10 years, say, Tottenham have really fallen away. Some of the reasons given by John Percy, for instance, he says, we've been open to offers for Yves Bissouma and Richarlison for over a year, but there hasn't been a lot of interest. And some of the reasons why is because of Daniel Levy's kind of inflated valuations on players. And that is really counting against us. He's given some stats. He says, since their Champions League final appearance in 2019, Tottenham are the 5th biggest spenders in terms of transfer fees in the world. But according to Transfer Market, equivalently, they rank 44th for income made on sales over the same period. And those unimpressive figures are propped up massively by the guaranteed 86.5 million that we received for Harry Kane. And we already will have received some add-ons as well. Including Kane, Tottenham have banked £10 million or more on just 13 players since that Champions League final appearance. Only Sonny remains at the club from that. And without Kane, we have sold only £66.4 million worth of talent since then. With him, £152.9 million worth. As an equivalent, since then, Chelsea have made almost £1 billion on player sales, more than treble what Spurs have made. And Aston Villa, who were only promoted to the Premier League back in 2019, have banked £416 million in sales. As I said, he says here, Tottenham's inability to sell well is put down to two main factors: unrealistic valuations put on players and a failure to effectively identify the best time to cash in on players. So if you look back, you would all probably agree that we regret not selling Eric Dyer for £50 million to Man United when Jose Mourinho wanted him. Dele Alli at one point was seen as a £100 million player. And it's easy in hindsight to see that it was a mistake not to sell Dele Alli. We didn't know how he was going to drop off. But, it is something that Tottenham need to improve. And back at the beginning of the Pochettino era and just before, we were really good at it. Weren't we? Remember Kevin Wimmer? I think we got, over £12 million, maybe even more for him from Stoke when he was a bit part player at Spurs. So I think it's a really fascinating situation and something that Tottenham do have to massively improve on. We have an option this summer to sell Christian Romero, but I actually agree with Daniel Levy with Christian Romero that unless we get £80 million for him, it's not worth it. However, if Christian Romero isn't willing to sign a new contract, and next year he's only going to get us £30 million, or the year after, even worse, a free, then that's why I think Tottenham maybe are getting their ducks in a row for other centre-backs in case they do get a big bid for Romero and are able to sell him for £75-80 million this summer, which would mark a change in their transfer strategy. But for me, we should be just offering Christian Romero the earth, give him the captaincy and say, you can be Tottenham's best player for the next 5 years. And even then, in 5 years' time, you'll be what? Let's say 3 or 4 years' time, you'll be 31. Van Dijk's still playing. What is he? 33, 34? You can still get a move to a huge European club then. Anyway, let me know what you think about it all in the comments, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, do give the video a like on YouTube. Do press subscribe if you're not already subscribed for daily Tottenham Hotspur transfer content and all the news and views from White Hart Lane. I actually won't be doing a watch-along for the Newcastle game on Sunday because I'm away. It's my sister's birthday, but I will be back next week for the Bayern game with a watch-along as well. So do join me for that and enjoy your weekends, everyone. Come on, you Spurs.